uh, unmuted, so it should be recording properly. We're gonna just have a little start period here. We're gonna wait for one more person to come in, but we are officially started now, so I will minimize this. Um, so thanks guys for coming. I'm Chuck Riffenberg. I have Rogue Herbalist Academy and Apothecary in Morrisville, Vermont. Thank you, Jenny, for asking me to do this. Came in, what was in the fall probably.
Yep.
So I've been doing herbalism for 15, 20 years. You'd asked me to kind of go a little bit into my background. Um, Studied plants for a long time, I guess working backwards. So I was working at the little health food store in Waterbury, doing all the herbal and supplement buying there. Prior to that, I worked for a big company, Nutraceutical, a big vitamin supplement company. I would go around Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and they have a huge number of products. So I got to learn a lot about the natural products industry like that. Prior to that, I was in St. Augustine, Florida. I went to college, actually, not for this, but got my degree in philosophy and religion and political science. So, and simultaneously, while I was doing that, I was working for different herb shops down there. Worked for two different herb stores, one kind of more clinical, one more of like a retail spot. It was cool. I got to learn a lot about Chinese herbs at that space. Um, yeah, just been studying it all along. And it's lifelong learning. Like you never are a master of anything. Like you constantly are learning and incorporating new ideas. So yeah, going back to the first college class I ever took was medicinal plants class in Castleton, where I'm from.
Yeah.
So from Vermont originally, and then ended up in New Hampshire, and now I'm back in Vermont. So kind of comes full circle. Um, Yeah, and so part of the goals we were just saying of the apothecary is also to teach classes there. So we have the academy and apothecary. This is good that we're doing the recording too, because I want to do more like online videos. So exciting. So too, we can. Well, I'll read this disclaimer just because I'm not a doctor, clearly. Nothing in this presentation is to be considered medical advice of any kind. None of the statements in the presentation have been evaluated by the FDA. Herbalists do not diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. So you should discuss all changes in your routine with your doctor. Many herbs and supplements are considered safe as they have been used for centuries in traditional medicine, but they can still have potential side effects and interactions with other medications or medical conditions. You're an individual and responsible for your own choices. So that's really important to say because, even though I know a lot about these herbs and how they work, nobody knows it all. So it's important to approach anything with caution. These are all super safe, but nevertheless, people have this kind of idea sometimes that, oh, it's natural, it can't hurt you. Like, this is not true. You can drink too much water and die. Like, you can overdo it on anything. So it's important to be cautious and mindful that this is not medical advice of any kind. Um, but so we came to talk about addiction and recovery. I made a quick little notepad when we first talked about doing this, kind of how I would lay it out on my mind. It's important for people to recognize, like, this is a human problem. It's been going on forever because it's built into the mechanism in our brains. Everybody has the propensity for addiction, to be addicted to not just drugs or alcohol, but behaviors of all kinds. We talked about a lot of different things. Um, if we look at um, kind of 3 points that I wanted to talk about, the culture, the society, and the systems in which we live. Um, we talked earlier about the culture. The culture we live in glorifies, glamorizes drugs. You see it in movies and television. Like there's a lot of, you know, like drug culture is made to look really appealing and fun and exciting. Um, Alcohol as well. Like alcohol is built into our whole culture. Like everyone talks about this, how, it's just normal. Like you're seen as the strange one if you don't have a drink with folks. Like people think that's odd. Um, just the whole culture, television in particular, is problematic with this, promoting drugs, alcohol, promiscuity, pornography. We talked about destructive behavior in general. The culture continues to reinforce this through Hollywood and movies, and the internet now is just a funnel for that as well. Um, the society is an offshoot of this. Our society is kind of we're at a real important juncture here, but we've got a society which produces lonely, unhappy people and broken families, which just perpetuates the problem. You think about what happened in the past 2 years with the COVID. You had people isolated and they're just generating more and more loneliness, which we'll talk about a little bit more down the road in the presentation here. And then there's systems that are in place that are actually profiting from people's suffering. The war on drugs, medical monopolies. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Um, the photo of the opium den on the right there, I just wanted to illustrate that is it gives you an idea like this is a human problem. And I'll talk about it again at the end. Um, I want to say too, though, these plants and drugs are not good or evil. They are just what they are. Think about it like from this perspective. If you were in China, ancient China, and you fell off your horse and broke your back, you're going to be really grateful when the local shaman comes to you and gives you opium because it's going to take away your pain. Like it's a magic flower from God is opium, you know. But what I'll come back to at the end is we need to have respect and reverence for all these plants and appreciate the power that they have. They're really powerful. Um, so we'll talk more about that as we go down the road here. Um, so and two, Jenny, you even said this about like what we take into it's not just what we take into our bodies for food or medicine, but it's also what you take in through your eyes, what you take in through your ears, um, is affecting your day. It affects how you're going to behave, how you feel. Um, a great example is if you're ever driving your car and you listen to some really like pumped up music, like you want to go faster. I'm guilty of this as well. So music can really affect your consciousness and your behavior. Um, and sometimes sometimes people like to listen to like the heavy music. Like if you're working out or doing something that's also beneficial, you can use that as a tool to bolster yourself and build yourself up. But also, people can abuse these things. People watch too much TV or pornography, as I said, is really harmful. Um, Again, too, all these things they're playing into the dopamine mechanism in our brains, right? The chemistry, really important. But just as far as the culture goes, like we need to build our own culture. We need to rebuild that which has been lost. We need to take into our eyes beautiful music and art and literature. Like nobody reads books anymore. Nobody reads anything. Not nobody, but you know what I'm saying. Um, and it's important to like cultivate this mindfulness. Like stop what you're doing and ask yourself, like, is this really helping me in any way? Is this improving my mood or making me feel better in any way? Um, I'll often, just catch myself, like, if you're just flipping through the TV, like, is this really helping me right now, or am I just scrolling, for just because I'm bored? Like people scroll for the novelty, just so that's culture. Um, uh, and in society, so I'm sure you guys know better than I do about this, having been in the field, but like addiction and trauma, like go hand in hand. Like that's at the root of so many of those things. People are seeking some sort of relief, some sort of pleasure in life. People who have been traumatized are more likely to become addicted, I would say, for a number of reasons. Um, but people's families are broken for a number of different reasons. Which, yeah, we can't go back, we can only go forward, but we can choose to break this cycle. And there are tools at our disposal to do so. But I think it comes back to awareness of like how these things are working and why. Um, as I said about, yeah, the current model of living, it's increased loneliness for sure. There's this notion, when you're 18, you should be out of your parents' house and like have your own, and people are in these little box apartments and they're just by themselves. the only connection they have is, through the computer or, however it ends up being. So we want to emphasize like a healthy society. Um, the systems. So these are some terms. You guys you're probably familiar with these terms like school to prison pipeline and prison industrial complex. Do you know these terms at all?
No, I actually don't.
So I mean, there you can find whole articles on them. School to prison pipeline is basically they're looking at the numbers of these kids. Basically, schools are funneling people right into prisons. Yeah, and drugs play a huge role in that. And the prison industrial complex is just the idea that there is a demand for prisoners, people ending up in jail, like they're being used as slave labor effectively, and that creates like a demand. Like there's a lot of jobs and a lot of like government money goes into keeping people in jail. Um, Even for like little things such as marijuana, like that's thankfully starting to change. We're seeing like the mindset change around that a bit, but there's still people in jail for cannabis, you know. Um, how about the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma? Are you guys familiar with this? See some nodding heads in the room, and the OxyContin marketing scandal. So we have again a system in place, a pharmaceutical system in place that is really just they only care about profit. They only care about control. They want to push as many of these drugs into the public as possible. OxyContin is just one of many, many examples. That's a particularly destructive one that we've seen in recent years, but that fuels the opioid crisis. Um, and then you see too, like mandatory treatments, and there's these medical monopolies. Like you have to do it explicitly the way that's been laid out by the system, by the government. Again, the war on drugs has prevented people from using more natural, safer harm reduction methods. Like cannabis is a good example. Like, I don't think that cannabis is a panacea, and I don't think that it is for everyone, but it's certainly a hell of a lot safer than heroin. Like if people are going to smoke pot instead of do opiates, that's a win. Like we can all agree that's a win. Um, so yeah, looking at that, I think is really important for this conversation as well. Um, So again, talking about this kind of ties into society and culture. If you
Rat
go,
Park.
have you seen this? You know about it? Yeah, super important. If folks don't know about this, go read about the rat park experiments. They had little rats in cages and they were ODing on morphine, and I think they gave them other drugs as well. But of course, they're in little tiny cages with only enough room to turn around. How is that not going to produce depression and a desire to that's the only way that they're getting that dopamine, those feel good reward chemicals, is through the water with the morphine. So they all would OD under those circumstances. Um, this fellow built an elaborate, this is a cartoon of it, you can see, but he built an elaborate complex for rats to live in, and they didn't get hooked on the morphine water and they never once overdosed. So this has given rise to this term, like it's not the chemicals, it's the
They had
cage.
friends and stuff to do.
Because they have friends and stuff to do. Yeah, and a community. Yeah, exactly. They have other rats to interact with, and we're not that different from these little laboratory rats. That's why they use them in medicine to study. They're mammals. They have the same sort of mechanisms, neurochemistry built in that we do. We're just a little more complicated. Um, so for people that don't know about that, I think it's really important to be aware. And two, you think if people are isolated in their little apartments and they don't want to go outside and they're just going to do drugs. So we want to avoid that. We want to create a culture of community like this place is doing. That's really critical to people's recovery.
Yes, absolutely.
Again, this is just what I was saying, isolation versus community. Yeah, don't be by yourself. One of the things I would get, depressed in the past, and still do at times, but my dad would always talk to me and he says, don't not leave your apartment for the day. Like even if you're on the day off, go outside, go for a walk, just do something, go to the post office, go to the grocery store, whatever it might be. Um, and then I put in the caveat, like the key is don't be with the wrong people. I think that something that happens a lot of the time is folks may go and get clean and they've been, 30 days sober or whatever it might be. And then they're at that point no longer physiologically addicted, but still that mechanism is built in. So then they return and are around old friends who are going to offer them drugs. It's very quickly, it's just going to, yeah, that's a trigger, that's going to very quickly lead you down the wrong path. So important for people to, you want to surround yourself with people who want the best for you. You want to be with, and if other people in your life have chosen not to get clean, you want to cut those people out, unfortunately, or encourage them to do the right thing, but you don't want to go be with other people who are going to encourage you to use. That's common sense. But again, because people want community, they want their friendships, it's hard to separate that. We have to make a real conscious decision when it comes to that. So I keep talking about dopamine, which dopamine is just one of many different brain chemicals. And I'm not a neuroscientist. Like I've listened to some of them, and I have, like a little knowledge of psychology. But um, this notion of dopamine is really important for people to understand. And this idea of like, there's easy ways to get your dopamine, and then there's.
And I read that.
Did you? Yeah. I haven't read the book actually, but I've listened to her speak.
Yeah.
This Dr. Anna Lemke. I just listened to the Huberman podcast with her, and it was great. So if people want to find that, you can just go on YouTube and find Andrew Huberman's podcast with Anna Lemke.
Andrew Huberman?
Huberman, Huberman. He's at Stanford. He's a great scientist. So again, this notion of like the easy dopamine hit versus like difficult dopamine. Dopamine's a reward chemical, so it's encouraging us to engage in certain behaviors. We want to choose things. We want to get our dopamine from beneficial activities instead of detrimental activities. And also, like the nature of some of these drugs, opiates or cocaine, what have you, or pornography, as we said, like it's not just drugs. Video games, a lot of these things are fueling that dopamine, and especially like with the phone, you can just keep hitting the button. It's literally you're hitting the dopamine. That is where we need to, recognize that's what's happening, and there's a reason that's happening. It's a natural mechanism at its core, but then we've got so much technology now that it really is. We need to return to a balance. So becoming aware of that, and then kind of building a wall between, like, say it's your phone, like keep the phone away from you as much as you can. Only use it for a given amount of time. Beneficial things would include like exercise, going on a walk, being in nature, being with loved ones. I'll talk about a few more things as well.
Definitely being in nature.
Being in nature is key. This idea of a dopamine detox or a dopamine fast, I think, is really important for people to consider and try to implement. You can kind of reset your system to baseline. It doesn't even take that long, really, but you want to eliminate the things that are that easy dopamine hit: the phone, drugs, obviously, and just being sitting with quiet. I'll talk about meditation as well, but if you can do that for an extended period of time, they say 30 days is the best. And the initial period of time will be the most difficult, but the longer you go, and day by day, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, dopamine fast, and we can use some of these herbs, in fact, which we're going to talk about in a minute. See where I'm at here. This is Jordan Peterson. Does anybody know this fellow? I don't know if I play it, will it play in the Zoom?
Try it.
We could try. I don't think it's gonna work, actually. It's just a still. But when we can email the presentation to folks, and then from there you'll be able to play it. This is just a little 5-minute clip of him talking about this mechanism and why it's so difficult and why people will relapse. He's talking about the more times you do a behavior, the more it's building up that circuitry in your brain. Um, one of the things I think that is really key that he's saying is if you have gotten clean a bunch, but then relapse and you say to yourself, to hell with it, or screw it, and go do drugs.
Called the fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. If you've done that 100 times or 1,000 times, then to hell with it is really built up as a circuit in your brain. So it's that much easier. If you think about like tracks on the snow, it's that much easier to go down that path than the alternative, which hasn't been a properly like laid out plan. I think they call them neural nets, like in your brain, like the pathways. So we really intentionally want to forge new pathways. So watch that little clip in your free time. That's good stuff. So let's talk about herbs. That's why everybody really came, I think, is what they're intrigued by. If you don't know the term adaptogen, I brought a book here. I'll show it to the camera. That way folks can see it on there, but I'll pass it around too. Um, adaptogens are basically it's a wide category of herbs, plants and mushroom substances that help you adapt to stress, make you more resilient to stress. The HPA axis that's listed here, that's your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, which is it's involved in a lot of different things in the body, but it's your fight or flight response. It's your stress response. Basically, taking these types of herbs make it less likely to go directly into fight or flight. It will make you more resilient. And they all work a variety of different ways. We can, if you want. I'm not going to talk about all these. I'm going to talk about kind of like one from each category, and then we'll go on. Maybe at the end we could do questions and come back and talk about other herbs if people want. And I have some samples. If you guys want to try anything, you can try some of the things that I brought.
Yeah.
But this is ashwagandha, which I was showing Jenny. This is ashwagandha root that we grew in our garden. Comes from India originally.
Milkweed.
Kind of, yeah.
Isn't it?
It's in the tomato family, so it's a nightshade. You don't eat the berries, but that's the root that you would use. You can make tea out of the root. You can make extract out of it. We make our own tinctures out of ashwagandha. This is Vermont grown adaptogen. There's kind of a spectrum of adaptogens. Some are more stimulating and focusing, energizing, and some are more calming. This is more on the calming side of things. Even though ashwagandha gets like marketed, promoted as being for energy, the reason it's not stimulating energy. The reason it's for energy is because it's nourishing and like restorative in action. It does have some activity on the GABA system, which is another neurotransmitter. One of the more common ones. GABA is gamma aminobutyric acid. It's an inhibitory calming amino acid, which is actually it's made in the gut. I'll talk about the gut in a minute.
Ooh,
But
big one.
it's important. But the idea is not only will this, it'll be helpful for calming, relaxing, but making more resistant to stress as well. People really love ashwagandha. It's becoming quite popular.
And you can make a tea or a tincture out of it.
Yeah, or you could powder the root and make, capsules out of it.
Oh, yeah.
People take it a lot of different ways. Go
I have
ahead.
a quick question about ashwagandha.
Sure.
So I have got some, but I'm afraid to take it because of the fact that it says it helps to promote restless sleep. And I was just wondering, does that make you sleeper? Or like you said, it just works on.
Yeah, it won't make you
different-
drowsy or anything. One of the recommendations is probably not to combine it with like benzodiazepines or other type of like real strong sedative drugs.
Right.
I think that's more the drug than the herb itself. But no, you're not going to get like real sleepy from taking ashwagandha.
Thank you.
I think you would get more restful sleep, certainly. But you'll see some of the nervines are more likely to be calming.
So would you recommend a daytime dose or a nighttime dose?
I would dose ashwagandha during the day for sure. People take it at night all the time too. It's not going to be one that either overstimulates you or really sedates you. Yeah, it's a good kind of middle of the road one.
Thank you.
You buy it in this form or no?
You can buy it like that, yeah, like we have it at the herb shop in bulk,
Mhm.
make tea out of it. I was telling Jenny, one of if the name means like smells like a horse,
Mhm.
or some people say strong like a horse. Um,
Okay,
it's not a bad flavor, but it would probably go better with like other herbs. And we could blend a whole formula for you, like make a tea if you like.
yeah.
A lot of people will do ashwagandha chai. It's a nice kind of spicy flavor to go with it. So lots of combinations. Yeah. So like, and there's a lot of crossover between plants. Ashwagandha is an adaptogen, but I would say it's also a little more on the nervine category as well. So here's some example of nervines. If you don't know this term, herbs that definitely do promote, like they're sedatives, they're relaxant herbs, calming, anxiolytics, reduces anxiety, reducing stress. And again, I won't go through all of these. Um, it would make it probably quite a long talk if I did them all justice. Um, they're each their own, and there's way more than this too. The one that I brought, if you want to try, is skullcap. Let's go over to skullcap
What
slide
do
here.
beans do again?
Promote calming, promote sleep. They're often good for pain. Um,
Anxiety, nervous system.
yeah, nervous system relaxants. And again, a lot of them work on that system, either the HPA axis or um, the GABA system. They're all connected, like everything's tied together. Um, if you want to try, these do have some of these tinctures are alcohol and water. So I don't know if you don't want to avoid those. There's a couple of glycerin ones, which are sweeter and no alcohol. But if you just want to like look at it, that's skullcap tincture. Um, so and we didn't grow that one, but particularly, but we grew skullcap in our garden as well. It'll grow in Vermont. Um, it's in the mint family. It's a real simple plant, not minty tasting, but it's in that family. Yeah, exactly. This is one of the best herbs you could use for anxiety. It's super safe. You don't really have to worry about much in the way of drug contraindications. Yeah, it's super safe. Um, you could take low dose, like you could take like a dropper full just per day as like a maintenance dose. Or if you were having a real severe panic attack, or if like somebody is in the early stages of trying to get clean, recovered,
Yes.
yeah, you would be dosing on skullcap if it were indicated,
Right.
and that would really help alleviate some of the, anxiety, the panic attack or stress you might be going through. It's really great for handling stress. So you can take a higher dose if you were having more levels of stress and panic.
Yeah.
And you're not going to overdo it on skullcap, really. You'd have
I
to,
put some in my tea.
please do, yeah.
He also has.
There's water here, yeah. Definitely try some. That's one of my favorite plants. Yeah, it says here, good for coming off coffee, but also, quitting smoking and alcohol and drug withdrawal in general.
That's why I want to try it.
Yeah, great. So skullcap is really important. In regards to quitting smoking, so lobelia is another nervine plant, but it's also a good respiratory antispasmodic. This is one of the key plants that they'll give people to try to quit smoking. It's, there's never a silver bullet, like perfect answer. Like I'm not going to guarantee you'll quit smoking with lobelia. But so the theory is that this lobeline alkaloid, which you can see pictured here, it's a similar structure to the nicotine alkaloid. So you're getting that kind of calming effect that nicotine would provide you. But I don't know. Yeah, it's out there. And it can be smoked, drank as a tea. It says avoid high doses, because if you do take too much of this, you could puke. Like it can cause gastrointestinal upset. But you just low dose it. It's a very safe plant. People kind of have a fear around lobelia because like if you take too much, it can make you nauseous and vomit. But they used to use it that way intentionally. So when they were more into like getting people to purge, they would give them huge amounts of lobelia. Which I don't encourage that. I would just say low dose it and use it for its respiratory properties and its calming properties. Yeah, but that one in particular is utilized for quitting smoking. I threw this in as well. This is kudzu from Chinese medicine. You guys may know kudzu from like it's an invasive plant in the south of the United States. Really like strongly invasive species, but also comes out of the Chinese Materia Medica as a treatment for alcoholism and drunkenness since at least the 600 AD. And it's it's in the pea family. If you look at the flower there, it's Fabaceae family.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have any like clinical use of this myself. I've only had people ask me for it. So I can't speak to it that much other than like what I've read about it, but it would definitely be something for people to try. Um, Maybe more local alternative would be like red clover, which is in the same family of plants and has somewhat similar chemistry. Um, and I'm going to talk about, let's go to the next slide here. Yeah, so red clover is an alterative as well, or some people call this alterative or alterative. I just call it alterative. The old world terminology for alterative is blood cleanser. They would say that to clean the blood. So a lot of them you can use for skin issues, acne or eczema, psoriasis, these type of things, because they're assisting in detoxification. If you have a real buildup of um, metabolic waste in the blood, like if you're not digesting and eliminating properly, then you can get a lot of buildup in the blood, and that's going to come out through your skin, red inflammation, etc. So red clover that I mentioned for the previous slide falls under this category as well, as do the artemisias. That's a whole family of plants. Wormwood, mugwort are common, sweet Annie. There's a bunch of different ones. Tarragon, the kitchen spice tarragon is an artemisia. Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah. There's a bunch of artemisias, and they're a wonderful family of plants. Burdock as well, yellow dock, gentian. These are all real bitter. And I always want to stress to people like how important that bitter flavor is. That's a whole lecture in and of itself.
Dandelion greens.
Dandelions, yeah. And the whole plant, yeah. Dandelion is a friend to all of us. I always have to comment like there's this whole marketing campaign to like kill dandelions and like, oh, poison your lawn so you can kill the dandelions. People should not be doing this. We should make friends with our local plants. Because when you're spraying poison on the lawn to kill the weeds, you're just killing yourself. You're just hurting yourself. But yeah, that bitter taste of the dandelion or these different plants, they're assisting in detoxification. They're helping improve digestion. They're doing a lot of different things in the body. I put this picture of the gut-brain axis because it does tie into addiction and dopamine and the whole thing. Like I said, like you see this picture here of altered gut microflora. That's your bacteria. People take probiotics to restore their gut flora. There are different microflora that produce different neurotransmitters, GABA being one of them. They'll produce different vitamins. They produce a lot of things. That's why you see so many problems when people are repeatedly put onto antibiotics. Disrupts their gut flora, erodes the membrane of the gut, leading to autoimmunity. The gut is a whole separate thing, but it ties into what we're talking about. I'd be willing to bet that most people with a proclivity to addiction have a disrupted, dysbiosis, gut membrane. So working on the gut is key for no matter what you're doing.
It's a constipated life you lead.
Yeah, indeed, though. Absolutely. And the bitters can help with that as well. I put a link in this. There's a link here. We'll email the presentation to everyone. But the bitters and dopamine link goes to a paper about hops, the bitter alpha and isoalpha acids in hops, which they, put in beer. But hops is a real strong bitter and nervine, like helpful with sleep, calming, does a lot of different things. But they found that the bitterness in hops, ratchets up your dopamine levels naturally. And it's useful for pain for that reason as well.
No idea.
Yeah, really fascinating, the bitter
Yeah.
category. Um, so in nutritives, we were talking about diet initially. Uh, Diet is really important. Most people in general are not well nourished, are, the standard American diet or sad. A lot of we eat a lot of sugar in our culture. We eat a lot of salt in our culture. I don't really demonize salt as much as most do, but I think sugar is a real problem. And like these companies know that, and they intentionally load their products
That,
because they know it works, and because it has that addictive mechanism. Yeah. So
More.
just to mention too, that bitters that I just mentioned can help break that sugar craving that we all have. Like we all have it. So bitters are really important for sugar craving as well.
Which makes
Um,
sense because the tie-in with the gut health.
Absolutely. And also, like, I kind of crafted my own dopamine fast when I first started reading about all this stuff. And use bitters as part of your dopamine fast because when you eat the delicious donut, which I have as well, anything that's real sweet like that is hitting that dopamine, like it's a reward.
Yeah.
It's in there because from an evolutionary standpoint, when we would go out and like say you found berries, you're only going to find them one time a year and they're going to be briefly there. But that's like a reward. That's like this special food that's only there one time a year. So it's got a little bit of that sweetness. Or if you found honey, when we first discovered honey, like super calorie dense, like it's a very nutritious sweet, but it's very high in sugar. But you eat that and your body is like, oh, that is wonderful for me. I need more of that because I might not get it again. Like, and it's going to keep you sustained. But now, again, we live in the modern era where we can have cake for breakfast 3 times a day if we want. We can have whatever we want anytime. So we really need to be mindful. Like there is that mechanism at work, and we need to, you know, utilize some of these other flavors to balance it out. Nutritive category, it's not just food, but a lot of herbs are considered nutritive. Alfalfa and amla, nettles, stinging nettles, we've got them growing locally. You can make tea out of them, or you can eat them when they're fresh, as like the way you eat dandelion greens fresh. Maybe like with the nettles, I wouldn't eat them fresh, but I would take them fresh and then put them in like a steam, steam them, and then they won't sting you.
Yeah.
Don't eat them fresh.
No, don't eat them fresh.
But you could, I guess, juice them fresh and drink the juice, and that would be good for you. Full of vitamins, full of minerals, many of which we are deficient in.
I have a question about the nettles real quick.
Sure.
Would it be bad if you, cause I know where a whole field of nettles are, but it's right on the same land as the sewer plant.
I probably would avoid it, and I mean, it would just be like you'd want to look where the water was effectively. Where the water goes is
Right.
yeah. That's another thing too. Just to mention for people that want to get into wild crafting and harvesting plants from the wild is you don't really want to harvest from a contaminated area. The side of the highway, what have you. That's kind of common sense.
Right.
But yeah, and then I just mentioned some of the other nutrients that are important just for healthy living. Omega-3s, which are the fatty acids in fish, and that's important just to mention because everybody talks about inflammation. It used to be in the olden days, the ratio of omega-3s to 6s was way higher. So we would be getting a lot more 3s than 6s. And now it's swapped. Like we get very few 3s and way more 6s. Like people are eating way more corn and soy and a lot of these things that are pro-inflammatory, like the type of oil in them, like your body tries to use it and then it ends up being, inflammation in the body. Choline is important for the nervous system, magnesium and other minerals, B vitamins. These are all important for a lot of different functions in the body. But those are like the top things that I would probably look at for somebody that's in recovery. Like make sure those nutrients are getting your body one way or another through diet or supplementing. So let's talk amino acids. We're doing good on time, right? Yeah, cool. So amino acids are the building blocks of protein, so you can get a lot of these through food as well. However, if you want to use them in therapeutic fashion, I just got 3 listed we'll talk about here, but there's a ton of them that do all different things in the body. I've used this clinically on myself and other people. The phenylalanine and tyrosine both can be used to ease withdrawal symptoms, but I went with the phenylalanine because it talks about like it's further back in that chain, so you can replenish those levels naturally. Just as an example, so I used it just for quitting caffeine, which I'm back on caffeine, but if you're somebody that wants to quit caffeine or just use this to ease withdrawal symptoms of anything, um, there's a link in here that I've put. I won't go to it, but you basically start with um, 2 caps in the morning, 2 caps in the middle of the day. Do that for a few days, and then you cut it down by 1 cap. So it's 2 in the morning, 1 at noon. Do that for a few days. Then it's 1 and 1. Do that for a few days, and then it's just 1 for the remainder. Because I'm somebody who, if I don't have caffeine in the morning, I will have like an excruciating headache by the afternoon. Uh, I don't know at what point I discovered that, but yeah. But I was successfully able to use this supplement to not have that happen and quit caffeine. So it's a really excellent tool. And you can read more about it online. Let's go a little further here. So this is NAC, N-acetylcysteine. Glutathione is your endogenous antioxidant. So that's the antioxidant that your liver makes naturally. But this supplement can help you increase those levels. Like it's a precursor to that antioxidant. This stuff is really great. NAC, I feel like everyone should know about it at this point. They've actually tried to restrict access to it a number of times, so don't let them do that. It's wonderful for respiratory problems. People have published papers on NAC for COVID and other respiratory problems. Supports liver and detoxification. There's some evidence that supports your cognitive function and substance use disorders. Really awesome little molecule. I basically take it, like I took a bunch over the winter. When I start feeling something maybe in my throat or chest, like I'm gonna catch cold, I'll dose on NAC just to get my levels up.
I usually do hibiscus. I use hibiscus
For
like if I start to feel sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, like anything with hibiscus.
I love hibiscus.
Makes me feel better too.
Yeah, and what you just said, because of vitamin C and the flavonoids, like that tartness indicates flavonoids and typically vitamin C as well. So yeah, good call. Um, I love it, hibiscus as well. I love it as iced tea in the summer.
With the
So,
lemon.
so good. The last of the 3 amino acids I'll talk about here is this L-theanine. This is originally found in green tea. What's nice about the L-theanine as a supplement is it's not green tea, so there's no caffeine as well. Green tea is a really balanced beverage in that you get that, uplift from the bit of caffeine that's in there, but the theanine keeps you calm as well.
That's what I drink every day, green tea.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll switch between tea and coffee, but yeah, I always feel calmer and clearer when I do drink tea. It's way better for like just clarity than coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee's got more of that like just dump of caffeine and you're ready to go.
Right, yeah.
And there's a lot of different caffeine containing plants we could talk about as well. Yerba mate, have you guys drank that before? That's a good caffeine plant.
Oh, I always call it yerba mate.
It's okay.
It's like your mate.
But the theanine as a supplement is really helpful. I would consider that for somebody that's in the early stages of recovery as well, dealing with anxiety and stress.
So that's in green tea?
It is.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, it's in smaller doses in green tea than if you took the supplement, but you're still getting it when you drink the green tea. It's very safe. I actually took 4 before I got married because I was nervous, and you still have a clear head and everything, but it's definitely it provides a sense of calmness. It's really lovely. Helps people with sleep as well. Yeah, that's a good one to explore. Uh, let's see. And just on the last bit of things, so different types of meditation, I kind of grouped all these in. There's different styles of sitting meditation.
Oh, cold water.
Yeah,
Oh, therapy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been like, you know, getting real into that shit.
good.
Wim Hof.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent. Dude, so I'll jump to the cold water to start with. Um, so I've known about it for maybe a year and a half as being something that can really be helpful. The first time I did it though, you know, it's rough, right? It's very difficult.
Yeah.
But if you looked at the Wim Hof stuff, he talks about, you know, the increase in dopamine and noradrenaline. Um, you're really what you're doing is intentionally putting your body in a fight or flight state, and then you're cultivating a sense of calm in there. Um, but I think that's one of these things that can help reset that whole dopaminergic system to baseline, if you will. Not even baseline, but kind of lifting it up so that you can experience higher levels of reward again. Now, the problem would be you don't want people, you know, and it may happen, but people may be doing some of these things and then do drugs again. It's going to be unavoidable, possibly, but they're just tools. You know, there's no silver bullets, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and in the Dopamine Nation book, they were saying that like cold water baths they increase your norepinephrine by like 500% and your dopamine levels by like 250%.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
And again, think about like our ancestry never had a hot bath or anything. They were always going into cold water and drinking cold water. And now like we can have a hot shower anytime we want. Like, why would we? And a lot of people have that like, oh, you're crazy for doing that. Like,
Mhm.
why would you intentionally take a cold shower or a cold bath? And again, it's because you feel the difference. It changes your day. Anyone who watches this video, I would encourage you highly to do it. It's becoming a little trendy now, but that's because it works. Like things that work do become trendy. And we want more people to get into it. It's super beneficial. You don't have to buy some, you know, $1,000 tank that they sell on the internet. Like
Mhm.
I just fill up my bathtub and dump a box of ice in there. Like we have ice in the freezer, even just the cold water, if people don't have ice and don't want to buy the ice, or if it's too cold to start with, what you do is just fill the cold tap, you know, and put yourself in it. What I'll do, just working backwards on the slide here, is I'll do the Wim Hof breathing, just like a little 11-minute video that he has,
Yep.
deep breathing, and then I'll get into the cold water after I do that.
Yeah, I do it in the shower. Like when I'm in the shower, I start doing the Wim Hof, and then I crank it to the cold like a little bit at a time.
There you go. And I don't think there's no wrong way to do it. I think as long as you're getting into that space where like you feel the cold, you know,
Yeah.
that's what we really want is to face that adversity, like intentionally, like deliberate cold exposure. There's a lot of cool research on it.
So same spectrum, opposite end, sauna.
Yeah, and then too, yeah,
Sauna.
people will use that heat as well. Um, yeah, I would like to do it where I'm in the freezing cold and then get into the sauna. I have not done that.
It's amazing. I
Yeah.
did it all last year.
That's really good for your lymphatic system as well, which is like, if you want to think of it as like an immune circulatory system, moves a lot of the immune stuff through your body.
Yes.
But the hot and cold, like cold is contracting and then the hot is expanding. So that's encouraging the circulation of material through your body, blood and lymph and everything. It's powerful. And it's effectively it's free, you know, to have a cold shower. Like it's challenging, but it'll totally change your day. The reason I started doing it on a regular basis was because I was like, I'd wake up and I'm like, I'm depressed. Like, why do I feel this way? Like I'm finally gonna just do the cold because I've had friends who would encourage me, like, do the cold, like get into the cold. So everyone should do it.
I agree.
Um, different types of meditation, though, I would also encourage. I've done sitting meditation, and then there's all different sorts of action meditation as well. Exercise of all kinds doesn't have to be just lifting weights, riding your bicycle, just going on a walk in the woods. All these things, moving your body is critical. That'll change your day as well. We spend a lot of times in the car. So if you can get out of the car and walk, we were made to walk. Again, thinking of our ancestors, they walked everywhere. And now we don't walk much at all in contrast. So that's really key. And you feel better after a walk. I've noticed it. So I think that is the end. I've got,
And
thanks.
Thank you, Jack.
I've got the opium poppy here just as the ending slide because I just want to return to that notion, like the plant, yeah, they're beautiful. They're stunning plants. And they're not evil. We need to, as a species, cultivate our reverence for all these plants, all these substances. They are powerful, and they deserve our respect. That is, I think, the solution to all this is like recognizing the power and like that they are a gift, they're really a wonderful gift. Yeah. So do we have questions from the chat or questions in the room? We can do both,
I have a question.
please.
So my issue with like supplements and vitamins and all that, like I love the idea of taking, all these supplements, but then I always start to feel, I get overwhelmed by like, I'm like, oh, I gotta take this and this and this and this and this and this, and then I end up with like, 19 pills that I gotta take every day, and then it's like too much.
Sure.
So like like if I wanted to just get like I don't know, what do you recommend for that?
Well, it's what you're saying is not uncommon. A lot of people will end up with like a huge, I mean, and I have just being in the field, have a ton of stuff at home. Like my wife gives me a hard time because I got so many bottles of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but a lot of times people end up with a huge collection of supplements that maybe they don't necessarily need everything on the shelf there.
Like, is there like a good like multi supplement kind of thing that you can recommend?
Um, there's multivitamins, and then there's like categories. What I would say is like as I went through the slides there, like different categories. Like I usually take an adaptogen every day, or I'll take Nervines every day. It doesn't have to be the same one. Um, and you don't have to have a bunch of them all at once either. Like you can try different plants, and it's good to you can get a whole formula, and I'll often build formulas for people, but
Yeah.
it's also useful to just do like one herb at a time. We call it simple, and take it and sit with the plant and taste it and smell it and get familiar with how it makes you feel and read about it too, so that you have that kind of cognitive understanding too of what's going on. Um, but yeah, a lot of people will come and we'll sit, like I'll do intakes with people as well, and that's one of the things we will do is just like look at like the list of supplements they're on, like what are the goals, maybe what could you eliminate or what would you do different.
So I could be like, I want something that makes me feel less depressed and boosts my immune system and helps boost my dopamine and gets rid of my drug cravings. And you could like build a concoction for that.
I mean, it would maybe help you with your goals there. Yeah, it's like I say, there's no silver bullet, but yeah, and you'd be surprised, like even one plant might help you to achieve a lot of those ends. It doesn't have to be that complicated of a formula, though it could. Like we could make it, either as a tea or tincture. Um, yeah, but yeah, I don't want to make any sort of guarantees to anyone like this will do exactly what you want it to
Yeah,
do.
it's less about that and more about like you could technically like build me a concoction that like that could have helped me to
that's what we do as clinical herbalists is like, yeah, sit with people and talk and like,
Like,
look
so that I could eliminate, like, taking
Oh, okay.
90 pills in a day and just take like this one
sure.
thing.
Yeah, that's the goal anyway, is
Okay.
to not have to take so many supplements or
Yeah.
pills. Absolutely. Yeah, like where could you get some of that stuff from your diet and nutrition?
Yeah, that's important too.
Yeah. And like just useful ways to incorporate plants in your diet and in your life. Like for instance, one of the adaptogens on the list is Schizandra berries from Chinese medicine, and they're like a tart little berry that they do a lot of things. But they're real tart and taste kind of like cranberry. And my wife makes these cranberry bars, and finally I was like, I've been saying it for a while. I'm like, we got to put some Schizandra in these bars, you know, and you don't even really taste it in there, but it's like a cool little way to get a little extra benefit, you know, from your food. Yeah,
It's hard though too, because a lot of people don't have access to, like, my kitchen looks insane, probably very similar, to yours. Like, I have jars of different flours and jars of different ground, like, I save all my avocado seeds, I save all my mango seeds, I dry them and grind them to a powder and do different things
Cool.
with them. You know what I mean? Like, so to build a bar like that, so to speak, you need quite a hefty amount of different ingredients. And it does get pricey to be
sure.
able to build these things. So if somebody like, like if Jill was saying, like, if she were to sit down with you and say, okay, so these are a few of my symptoms, these are a few of my plaints, could you make me a tea or, like a glycerin type of tincture
Sure.
to help aid in that, you would definitely be able to
Yeah.
provide that,
I wouldn't
right?
use the term symptoms, but yeah,
Right, okay.
absolutely.
What term would you use?
You could say maybe ailments or,
Ailments,
you know,
okay.
we assess patterns and,
Right.
yeah,
The symptoms is more Western medicine, right?
right,
Okay.
yeah,
I have another question too.
sure.
What's your take on kratom?
Yeah, I was wondering, I had put it in the presentation, but then I took it out. Um, again, it's not bad. I think that I know that a lot of people have actually used it as like a harm reduction strategy. Um, it's like anything else though, there needs to be a respect around it. Um, I think it's way less harmful than the synthetic opiates that have been conjured by man, you know.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with what's his name, Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, it's on YouTube. Hamilton Morris is his name. He goes and studies different plants and drugs and makes like documentary style videos from really fascinating. You can go watch the one on, I think they call it Kratom, but he
What's
goes,
his name?
Hamilton Morris
Hamilton.
does great work.
Yeah, because I
But-
tried. I got some. Is it kratom or kratom?
He calls it Kratom, yeah.
So I got some. My friend sent me some from Florida. But it was from like a dispensary, and it kind of seemed to me like it was like the equivalent of like buying CBD at a gas station kind
Sure.
of stuff. Like and it was like the amount that I had to take to achieve the effect that I wanted was so substantial. I mean, like I tried to do it in like in a liquid and it was like so much powder in the liquid and just like trying to choke it down was just, oh my god, it was terrible. And then like so I tried to like, I got like little pill capsules and I filled it up with the powder and I had to take literally like 19 of the pills to get the amount of powder in it. And by that time I was like nauseous from taking so many pills,
Huh.
it was like I couldn't get the amount of it that you need in order to like achieve certain effects is like so much. And like where do you get like a reliable, like good quality
Sure.
stuff?
Well, and unfortunately, we can't buy it in Vermont because
Yeah,
it's on the
illegal in
it's
Vermont.
illegal in the state of Vermont, which is kind of absurd to me. You know, I don't think I don't think any plants should be illegal.
Yeah.
The yeah, the problem with Western society, if you will, or just the technological society in which we live, is people will take these natural substances and then they're either concentrating them or refining them, making them more drug-like, and not using them as kind of the the first peoples or indigenous peoples, whatever language you want to use, would use. Like they chew the leaf down there.
Yeah.
In that documentary that I mentioned, he talks to some of these farmers, the Kratom farmers, and he says like, "Oh, would you be surprised? Like, has anybody ever died from this plant?" He asks, and they just laugh at him. They're like,
Yeah.
"No, like that would never happen."
Yeah.
Um, I remember a good example is, I guess it was in the 2010s or maybe a little earlier than that. Um, if you recall when Salvia divinorum was like a big thing, it's a
Yeah.
hallucinogenic plant, but people were smoking the extract of this plant, and then they were recording their experiences, putting them on YouTube,
Yeah.
and doing dangerous and dumb stuff, right?
Yeah.
But again, that's not how the native peoples use that plant. They chew
Yeah.
the leaves, so it's not only is it a different mode, you're also getting a much milder dose, sublingually, as opposed to like he in that same guy's work, he asked those people about smoking the plant, and they're like, no, that's an insult to the plant to smoke it, like you chew the leaves.
Yeah.
So it's really about redefining the way that we think about this stuff. Um, yeah, and having a respect and reverence for these plants. I think they're all really useful tools.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a proponent. I think you don't want to, um, you know, that's the danger is people will say like, oh, people are going to end up overdosing on this or taking this with drugs and having a problem. And that may happen, but it's all, I mean, what's more harmful though is if you just look at one to the other, like what's more harmful, the fentanyl or the plant,
Right.
the answer is obvious.
Right.
So it's complicated. Yeah.
Oh, and I have one more question.
Sure.
And I don't know if I'll know the answer to this. Does Kratom work if you're on Suboxone?
Probably not is my guess, but I don't know.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Theoretically, it might still be blocking what you're trying to get.
Well, is it an opiate?
It's a different agonist, so I think it's mu opioid is what it's called. But yeah, MU.
Yeah.
Oh, you were.
MU, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
It has the same effect as or it can have the same effects as opiates, or it can have the same effects as like Adderall, depending on like what
The
leaf
dose,
you take and
yeah.
like the dose that you take, and yeah, it's crazy. But it does work on your opiate receptor. So that was a question that
That's
I've
why
always
my
had.
impulse is to say it probably would not work if you were on Suboxone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, these are complicated questions, right? And we're not going to solve them here, but I would encourage people just to study plants as much as possible, So I guess we lost our one in the chat, but that's okay.
Yeah, we did.
That's okay.
That's all right.
So should we say goodbye and then end the recording?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in and watching this video. Hope that it's helpful. Can check out the website, rogueherbalist.com, and come visit us in Morrisville and Johnson. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Chuck.